In the early hours of June 6, 1944, at Strong Point WN-62 on Omaha Beach, a machine gunner named Heinrich Soe was cleaning the barrel of his MG-42. Just 3 days earlier, he had written to his girlfriend, promising her that the invasion would be the enemy's grave, and that they would be thrown back into the sea within hours. His confidence had been bolstered by the visit of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, who had personally inspected their positions, nodding with satisfaction at the overlapping fields of fire and declaring, "When they come, this beach will be their cemetery." So looked out over the English Channel. The night was calm, almost serene. He couldn't have known that in a mere 12 hours he would be found weeping uncontrollably, surrounded by 13,500 empty shell casings, his gun barrel warped from heat, his mind unable to process the scale of the invasion force his eyes were seeing. The mathematics of German defeat were about to be written, not in military strategy, but in the shocked testimonies of men who witnessed the largest amphibious invasion in human history from the wrong side of the gun sight. The so-called Atlantic Wall, a formidable defensive line that stretched 2,400 miles from Norway to Spain, was declared impregnable by Hitler himself. Along the Normandy coast, immense defensive preparations seemed to justify this confidence. At Omaha Beach alone, the Germans had constructed 8 concrete bunkers, 35 pillboxes, 4 artillery positions, and 85 machine gun nests. The tidal zone was a killing field, sown with 3,700 obstacles, including mines, Czech hedgehogs, and Belgian gates, and behind the beaches lay 6.5 million landmines. The defensive firepower was calculated to be massive, yet these calculations rested on the fatally flawed assumption of unlimited ammunition. The first critical German miscalculation was meteorological. On June 5th, Luftwaffe meteorologist Walter Stuba had confidently declared that the high winds and rough seas made an invasion impossible, assuring the High Command that poor conditions would continue for at least 2 weeks. Based on this forecast, many senior officers had left their posts. Rommel himself had departed for Germany to celebrate his wife's birthday. Even the Channel naval patrols were canceled due to the rough weather. Unbeknownst to the Germans, Allied weather stations had detected a brief 36-hour break in the storm, a window that Eisenhower seized. As the invasion began late on June 5th, the German command structure was paralyzed by confusion. Radar stations detected massive aerial formations, but operators dismissed them as known Allied deception raids. By midnight, reports of paratroopers landing flooded in, but they were contradictory, some claiming British to the east, others American to the west. Dummy paratroopers with firecrackers, part of Allied deception operations, multiplied the chaos. Major Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, grasped the gravity of the situation and immediately requested permission to attack. But the response from headquarters was damning. "Do not move until the situation clarifies." Von Luck later wrote that he knew at that moment they were lost, paralyzed by their own command structure. The full scale of the disaster became apparent at dawn. Across the Normandy coast, German observers witnessed a sight their training had never prepared them for. From horizon to horizon, the sea was covered with thousands of vessels, 6,939 ships in total, the largest naval armada ever assembled in human history. To the German defenders, the sight was psychologically devastating. An artillery officer at WN-62 reportedly told his men they were witnessing the whole world arriving on their doorstep. At 5:35 a.m., the naval bombardment commenced, a thunderous ordeal that surpassed anything the German veterans had experienced. Even on the Eastern Front, the cumulative firepower was immense. One battleship alone fired 255 14-inch shells in 34 minutes. Concrete bunkers designed to withstand attack cracked under the naval gunfire, and men were buried alive. The fortifications they had placed absolute confidence in were crumbling like sand castles. The Luftwaffe's response revealed the true desperation of the German position. When an officer with Jagdgeschwader 26 was ordered to attack the invasion fleet with his entire force, he responded, "What entire force? I have 2 planes." The Luftwaffe, which had promised air superiority, could muster only 319 sorties on D-Day against 14,674 Allied sorties. The attack was reduced to a futile gesture by 2 planes strafing Sword Beach, a single run that symbolized German impotence. As the first assault waves hit the beaches at 6:30 a.m., the carnage began. Heinrich Soe at WN-62 was in one of the few undamaged positions, and his MG-42, firing at 1,200 rounds per minute, contributed significantly to Bloody Omaha. But the German defenders soon began to experience material shock. No matter how many men fell, more appeared. Every destroyed landing craft was replaced by 3 more. By midday, critical ammunition shortages appeared. Defenses calculated for a limited assault exhausted their supplies within hours. While American destroyers fired hundreds of shells at single targets, German artillery was rationed to 4 shells per gun per day. The German Armor Reserve, the force Rommel insisted must repel the invasion on the beaches, remained paralyzed. The 21st Panzer Division, the only armored unit close to the beaches, did not receive orders to attack until 4 hours after the landings began. When they finally attacked, they encountered specialized Allied armor, Hobart's Funnies, and were ultimately forced to withdraw after witnessing a massive air armada of 250 gliders bringing British reinforcements. The division lost 25% of its strength that day. Behind German lines, massive airborne forces created multiplying chaos. German paratrooper commander Friedrich von der Heydte's assessment was damning. The Allied airborne operation was everything ours had never been. Massive, coordinated, and supplied. We dropped battalions, they dropped divisions. The psychological impact of paratroopers appearing everywhere paralyzed German responses, leading units to refuse to move or fire at shadows. Simultaneously, German command and control disintegrated. Allied aircraft systematically destroyed communication lines, while French resistance activists cut telephone cables and radio communications were jammed. General Max Pemsel, Chief of Staff of the 7th Army, recorded increasing frustration as entire divisions vanished from the communication network by noon. As darkness fell, the psychological reality of their defeat began to set in. The impregnable Atlantic Wall was breached. The Luftwaffe had essentially ceased to exist over Normandy, and the Kriegsmarine had lost numerous craft while sinking only 1 destroyer. One German commander reported, "Division combat strength 35%, all coastal strongpoints lost, artillery 90% destroyed, enemy advancing inland." Attempts to bring forward reinforcements and supplies failed completely. Every road and bridge was under constant Allied fighter-bomber attack. The 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, took 17 days to reach Normandy instead of the expected 3, losing 30% of its vehicles to air attack without ever firing at ground forces. Meanwhile, Allied logistics operated with stunning efficiency, landing 15,000 tons of supplies daily, more than the entire German army in Normandy consumed in a week. By June 12th, German forces were approaching psychological collapse, having lost 26,000 men. Even the elite 6th Paratrooper Regiment, which had never retreated, withdrew in disorder, their commander reporting, "My regiment no longer exists as a combat unit." The survivors are psychologically broken. Even an isolated German tactical victory, Michael Wittmann's destruction of 13 to 14 tanks at Villers-Bocage, only revealed the futility of their position. Wittmann's lost Tiger tank was replaced with difficulty. The British losses were replaced within hours. The tactical brilliance of individual German soldiers could not overcome industrial mathematics. The fall of Cherbourg on June 26th a major port fortified over 4 years, was another psychological blow, falling in only 5 days. Its commander explained that resistance became meaningless against unlimited enemy resources. The knockout punch came with Operation Cobra on July 25th, preceded by a preparatory bombardment from over 2,400 Allied bombers, dropping over 4,100 tons of bombs. The intensity of the bombing was indescribable. One German commander reported, "My division is annihilated. The survivors are no longer soldiers, but broken men." The ultimate catastrophe was the Falaise Pocket, where 10,000 Germans died and 50,000 were captured. With roads carpeted with dead horses and burning vehicles, under a sky of continuous Allied fighter-bomber attack. The final accounting of the Normandy campaign showed Germany with approximately 320,000 casualties and virtually all armor in France destroyed. Allied losses were quickly replaced. German officers provided the most objective assessments of the disaster. General Hans Speidel, Rommel's chief of staff, wrote that Normandy proved that courage alone could not overcome industrial supremacy. Rommel himself, in his final report to Hitler, wrote that the unequal struggle is nearing its end. I must beg you to draw the necessary conclusions without delay. The German soldiers in Normandy had witnessed the future of warfare. The Americans had turned war into an industrial process, manufacturing victory on assembly lines. American factories produced 96,000 aircraft in 1944. Allied ammunition expenditure in one day exceeded German production in a month. The machine gunner Heinrich Sau later reflected, "My 13,500 rounds meant nothing against their unlimited replacements." The paratrooper commander, von der Heide, concluded, "War had become a matter of industrial capacity, and we had challenged the world's greatest industrial power with horses and outdated dreams." D-Day, from the German perspective, was not merely a military defeat, it was a complete ideological and psychological collapse. They had expected to face weak democracies, and instead encountered an alliance that had transformed war into an industrial process of overwhelming efficiency, where production statistics mattered more than tactical brilliance. The German defenders had brought courage, training, and determination to the battle. The Allies brought unlimited industrial production. In trying to hold back the Allied invasion, they might as well have been trying to hold back the tide itself. Their defeat was total, a crushing demonstration that the Nazi vision had collided with the reality of Allied industrial supremacy and shattered completely. I've aimed to capture the dramatic and tragic tone of the original piece, focusing on the themes of material shock, industrial supremacy, and the psychological collapse of the German forces. Does this length and style work for your needs?